Well, it's that time again, and our thoughts turn to Christmas, of course. And for many, it's a time of joy and, should I say, reflection. Our traditions here in the UK are based on the Christian faith, and our leader in Gloucestershire is Bishop Rachel, who is, of course, an honorary member of the Honourable Company. And Rachel is with me now. Hi there, Rachel.
Hello, Mark. Good to be with you.
How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. A bit
Good.
chilly, but I'm
Bit
very well.
chilly. Yes. Now I know this is a bit of a cliche, but I know you're a very busy person with all the responsibilities that you have. But I'm just wondering whether in December, there's a special something in the air for you as you go about your work.
Yes, I mean, people often say it's a joke amongst clergy because people often say, "Oh, busy time of year, bishop," or "busy time of year, vicar." And actually, do you know, in many ways, it's not as busy as other times of year
Ah,
because there are lots of carol services. I love carol services, lots of retelling of the story of the first Christmas. Um, but actually, a lot of the usual stuff of the year kind of gets put to one side. But I love being with people in different places across Gloucestershire, across the diocese, children, young people, adults, for all different sorts of carol services, nativity plays, events. Yeah, very special.
good. Bit of a cheeky one, this, Rachel. Turn the clock back a few years. What's your first Christmas memory as a little girl?
Oh gosh, I can answer that very easily.
Oh,
My first Christmas memory is my mum used to have these green stockings that only came out at Christmas, and we used to put them on the end of the bed. And I can still remember that excitement of waking up in the morning in a bedroom I shared with my brother, and suddenly this green stocking being all funny shaped and all different things in it, and being so excited. And of course, the tangerine, always the tangerine in the toe. And that's my first memory. And then obviously every Christmas after that was the same green stockings.
and
Um, but the sense of magic of how did that happen? I went to sleep and then I woke up and there are all these funny things. So yeah.
can you remember how long you believed until you realized that Father Christmas has lots of helpers?
Oh, yes, that's an important one there, Mark.
I know.
I think, oh, I don't know. I want to say 9 or 10. I'm
Okay.
not too sure. I'm the youngest,
All right.
and I think my brother and sister knew that perhaps Santa had more helpers before I did,
Yeah.
and I was a bit disappointed by that.
Oh. And what about nowadays? What is, I mean, I assume you do services on Christmas Day, but when you were able to shut the door and just relax
Yeah.
with your husband, what any traditions there that you get up to that you can
Yeah,
share?
I mean, Guy, my husband, and I, we have a big tree in the hall at Bishop's Court, and we've had a tradition since we were married of actually buying a special decoration every year that is
Okay.
connected to something special from that year. So the year I was consecrated as bishop, we've got one of Canterbury Cathedral. When we've been on holidays, we always try and find a decoration, and we sort of have a tradition of putting the tree up and hanging them up and remembering each year and what it reminds us of, which is great. One thing you might be surprised to know is that on Christmas Day, we don't have a festive Christmas lunch because
No.
we're so exhausted. We usually just buy a really nice selection of cheeses and a nice bottle of wine, and somewhere kind of late afternoon, early evening, we just sit down and relax because it's been a very full week. I've usually done the service in the morning at the cathedral, perhaps been to some sort of community event in the afternoon. I will have done midnight in a parish church somewhere, and probably an evening Christmas carol service as well. So it's pretty full on.
How do you feel about the Christian message these days? I mean, Christmas is obviously, for many people, it's a time of for faith and Christ's birth, but there are equally very large numbers of people who probably don't really know much about the Christmas message. And I'm just wondering how you balance those two thoughts.
Yeah, well, I'm unashamedly going to be confident about the Christian
Of
message of
course.
Christmas. And I get very irritated. I've been wandering around the shops and seeing things like festive pies Or what did I see the other day? Rather than a Christmas slice, a festive slice. And I want to say, no, I want to keep Christ in Christmas. In the same way that different faiths celebrate their festivals.
Yeah.
So for me, it's really important that I remind people of what the Christmas story is about. I guess when we were children, there was always the nativity play, the singing of carols that told the story of Christ's birth. And now lots of people don't know that story. So it's really important to me that we do find ways of telling the story of that first Christmas. And also for me, being clear that that's not the end of the story. So for me, you know, what that baby Jesus grew up to be a man, died on a cross, came back to life again on Easter Day, that God is still with us, no longer seen. But actually, how do we tell that story, which is not just about a story from a long time ago, but is about living faith? And I think for me, that's perhaps really poignant this year as we look to everything that's going on in the Middle East and remind ourselves that Christ was born in Bethlehem, the West Bank, Palestine, and actually that the message of Christmas is all about hope in our world.
And it's a hope that's very much needed at the moment, because that, you know, that dispute, that's not the right word, but the issues that you refer to have been going on for 2,000 years, effectively, haven't they? And
absolutely,
I love your enthusiasm and optimism, but there's a cynic in me that says, actually, I'm not sure they're ever going to be resolved, sadly, you know.
No, and I think what I do want to say is remind people that in that Christmas story of the first Christmas, people, you know, it's always, you know, little tiny babies in sweet smelling straw, and it's all lots of ahs and oohs and beautiful angels. Actually, now this is a story about a child born with no place to be born in a country that was under occupation, and Jesus and Mary and Joseph have to flee into Egypt as refugees. And then we get the story of the slaughter of innocent babies by Herod, who was threatened by the birth of Jesus Christ. And so actually, you know, the story of 2,000 years ago resonates with where we are in our world. And into all of that, God comes into that mess and pain to be with us. And that's really important for me that I convey some of that in what I share over Christmas.
Yes, I couldn't agree with you more. So next year, what are your thoughts on 2024? How do you feel that's going to go, maybe for you personally, or perhaps for the Church of England? I don't know whether there's any big changes coming up, you know. How do you see next year?
Well, of course, I'm not ever one for making New Year resolutions, because for me, life will always be full of joy and pain. I suppose one really key thing for me is that I, as well as being Bishop of Gloucester, I am the Church of England Bishop for prisons in England and Wales. And one of my real determinations, which I've begun now and will be continuing into 2024, is how to really work with people in Parliament, with people locally, nationally, for reform in our prisons. Our prison system is broken. And actually, that begins with us asking, what are our prisons for? What sort of society do we want to be? We want stronger communities in 2024. Of course, we want safer streets. And what we're doing at the moment is not creating stronger communities, and it's not creating safer streets, because people come out, they reoffend. We're not working at rehabilitation. We're not looking upstream at those babies and the chances that they are given. And how do we look upstream? So that's going to be a real big focus of mine in 2024, continuing with criminal justice and speaking out into that space.
It's we wish you well with that, and that may be a part of your ministry that some of our members may not be aware of. So I'm sure they'd all join me and wish you well with that. Rachel, the clock is ticking, I'm afraid, and I just wonder whether you could give us a sort of a Christmas message from you in Pitt Street in Gloucester for our membership today.
Well, I think I've probably already begun that message, but what I really want to say is that Christmas is a time of joy. It's also a time of sadness for many people. It's a time of togetherness and can be a time of loneliness. And my message is that you will know yourselves loved, you'll know yourself loved by God, that there will be a real sense of hope. As you look at those Christmas lights, what I say every Christmas is that those lights, those tiny lights, those tiny flickerings of candles remind us that in all the darkness will never overcome the light, and I would say the light of Jesus Christ. So enjoy those twinkly lights, hold fast to them even amidst the darkness, and I hope you have a peaceful and hope-filled Christmas. Happy Christmas.